Well, good day to all of you, Team Healthy. I notice we have our usual suspects here in our live chat. You're early and ready to go, and I just really like the way that you all encourage each other. And I really appreciate that. That's what we're here for. I want us to be a place where you can come and talk about who you are and what your needs are, and how we can encourage each other to healthiness. That's the whole point here on Team Healthy, right? DRC, dignity, respect, and civility. Say it with me now. Okay. Um, I have an ongoing question that people can ask me, and in fact, I'm going to address more of it in next week's live feed as well, because of some other questions that I don't know that I'm going to have a chance to get to today. But a question that so commonly comes to us is: Are narcissists just stuck in their own loop of dysfunction? And, we'd like to think, I know the fact that you're here and you're on the YouTube channel, you're here at the live feed, you're trying to figure out all the pragmatics that go along with this dealing with narcissism. You're here thinking, well, I think I can make adjustments. I think I can change. Certainly, there are ways of life that would go better than what I've been exposed to. Let's talk about it. Let's make the internal adjustments so that the external adjustments are going to be the real deal. Let's get it going. And so then you think, well, surely a narcissist can also have that same kind of thinking. You would think that they would appreciate that so much of what they have going on is not working for them at all. And yet, the more you talk to these people, the more you try to explain your better alternatives, or you may plead your case, or you may ask them to work with you so that you can forge a different way of living and interacting, the more they seem to double down rather than saying, sure enough, I have a lot of broken relationships. And I need to start with number one here. I need to start with myself, and I need to examine who I am and why I respond the way that I do and how I might be contributing to some of the difficulties that are in front of me. No, instead, they blame shift. They make excuses. They try to exonerate themselves. Somehow, their problems are someone else's fault. And so we ask that question: Are they just stuck in a loop of dysfunction? And you may recall that one of my earlier videos was the number one way that you can watch how narcissists, how you can identify narcissists. Just watch how they manage themselves in conflict. They keep going back to the same old that doesn't work, and they don't learn. They don't take responsibility for themselves. And so, are they stuck? The answer is unfortunately yes. I want to dive right into the questions that you all have sent. And those of you who are new or are not familiar yet with our format, just know that what I do is, if you're on the live chat here, you can go ahead and put some questions, and then I'll answer them for next week. And then if you and most of you are going to be watching this on tape delayed, which is why we do it that way. Put your questions in the comments section below, and then I'll pick up on them, and I try to read every one of them. And then those that I'm able, then I'll pick up on next week. Oh, by the way, you probably saw my little announcement. We're going to be doing a webinar in roughly 6 weeks. On July the 19th. It's a Tuesday. It's going to be a live feed about the malignant narcissist, what you need to know about the malignant narcissist. And we have a registration that's already beginning on that. And we're getting an incredible response from that. A lot of you are very interested in that topic. So after the live feed, of course, check out the link, and then we'll have that. And then you'll be getting some stuff on your email list. I hope you're on our email list and all. Okay, going to the questions. This first person asked the question: if a narcissist is married to someone you considered a friend who is now acting as their flying monkey, is there any hope for a future relationship with them? How would you be able to tell that they had changed and could be trusted? This is a tough one. We talk about how narcissists are stuck in their own loop of dysfunction. There's something that the rest of us need to just be really honest with ourselves about, and that is, even if you don't have the prominence of narcissism that the narcissist has, you have the capacity for it. When we talk about narcissism, we refer to people who are highly controlling, or they don't take responsibility for themselves. They can be manipulative, they can be selfish and entitled, and they can act with an attitude of superiority. And you may have somebody that, in their own separate way of living and being, they may not really put a lot of emphasis on those dysfunctional traits. But when we talk about a flying monkey, we talk about somebody who comes under the control and under the influence of the narcissist in such a way where that flying monkey then becomes an apologetist on behalf of the narcissist. They prop up, they become the enabler, they prop up all sorts of dysfunctions that the narcissist perpetuates, and then they they actually are a part of that individual's inner circle. For example, let's suppose that the narcissist has a bad temper, and the flying monkey, obviously, they don't like people with a bad temper, and maybe they don't have one themselves. But when you talk to that flying monkey, they'll say, "Well, he's just been under a lot of stress lately." Or let's suppose that the narcissist has been negligent in following through on certain tasks. The flying monkey can come along and say, "Well, she's had so many other things on her agenda that she just couldn't get to it." Now, surely you understand. And so they make excuses on behalf of it. And then when you call that flying monkey out and say, "Hey, look, I'm not comfortable with how you're basically dismissing me while you're propping up unhealthiness," they can look at you and it's like, "No, you're just not understanding that person the way that I do." And so the question is, would you be able to tell them that they've changed, and or if they've changed and if they could be trusted? If this flying monkey is someone that you consider to be a friend, I would at the very least make an attempt to say, "I've noticed things have been a bit different since this other person has come into your life. And I've noticed that you seem to be making excuses on this person's behalf." The hope is that that person would see the light. There's an extremely high probability that the flying monkey won't receive it because they're too tied to the narcissist who's just stuck in that loop. But there may be a time when that relationship will fall apart. And you having already registered the fact that you're not comfortable with that relationship could eventually become someone that that flying monkey will approach later and say, "Hey, look, I was wrong. Will you forgive me, or will you work with me? I need to rebuild my connections that have been burned because of my association." It might be that that would be the case, but as long as that person is tightly tied to the narcissist kind of like they take over that person's mind, and that's what flying monkeys and the narcissist. You remember that's all derived from the script from the Wizard of Oz, the Wicked Witch of the West, and her flying monkey that just did whatever she told them to do. And as long as that narcissist is in charge, and as long as the flying monkey thinks that there's something in it for him or her, then you don't really have a real good chance. I would say something if that was a real friend, but at the same time, I would keep my expectations pretty low. Okay. This next one, this person asks, "Should I tell my narcissistic husband that he is a narcissist?" The short answer is no. Uh, Now, let's keep in mind, narcissists think of the word narcissist as a dirty name. And in fact, if they're mad or if they're trying to get a dig at you or they're trying to score points against you, they may actually say, "You know what, you're a narcissist." And they can project their own unfinished garbage onto you. When I use the term narcissist or having narcissistic tendencies, I'm trying to, it's basically speaking shorthand. And I'm basically saying that there's a pattern of life that's attached to that word. Let's take a look at that. And so when you say, "Should I tell my husband that he's a narcissist?" I would stay away from that word because they're going to focus on the name that they think that it is. And so what I would do instead is I would focus on the ingredients that are a part of that person's pattern of life. For example, their overuse of anger, or their being extremely defensive, or their lack of understanding and empathy, those kind of things. And if you're going to talk to that person, and obviously if this is your husband, you want to at least talk about it, describe the ingredients rather than using the name narcissist, which they're going to just go off on because they're thinking, now you've been listening to some stupid pop psychologist and you're an idiot and you don't know what you're talking about. Those psychology folks, they don't know what they're talking about. They just go into the discount mode. Guys like me, we don't know what we're talking about, do we? But nonetheless, I would describe the symptoms that I see, as opposed to offering a name that they're predisposed to shut down. Now, having said that, should you tell your husband that he's a narcissist, or in the parlance that I'm using, should you talk with your husband about the concerns that you have about his behavior? Well, you'd like to think that communication is one of the key ingredients for a healthy marriage. So, yeah, go ahead. But if this is a long-term relationship that you've been in for quite some time, and this is a pattern that you've attempted to discuss with that person over and over, and you're still talking about it and nothing has changed, at some point you have to change your tactic. It's like, I can't just expend so much communicational and emotional energy trying to convince that person that they have problems that they won't come to terms with. I need to make sure that I'm working on myself. And that one of my biggest emphases here is we can't afford to get caught in the undertow with the narcissist. They are controlling, you're controlling. They gripe, you gripe. They complain, you complain. They're defensive, you're defensive. You can. What happens is the more negative person in the equation winds up winning, in the sense that they set the pace. And so sometimes you just have to say, rather than trying to get that person to go with my pace, I'm just going to go ahead and go on my pace. And when the narcissist is not in sync with you, even if it's that person you're married to, you stick with your best ingredients anyway, with the determination that says, I can't let that person define me. By the way, we have a word for what I'm describing, and it's called boundaries. The narcissist is stuck in their loop, but you don't have to go in there in your pleading and persuasion. And then before you know it, you're circling down the drain with them. Okay. Okay. This next person starts with, okay, doc, what's the cure? Okay. I'm fine with your informal way of speaking. That's fine with me. What if a friend's narcissism and resulting meanness is destroying their life? How can they be helped if they can't admit that they have any problems with anyone, and they blame everyone else for everything all the time? So this person is asking, is there a cure? The answer is yes. How can they be helped? The answer is the old adage, you can take a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. It comes down to people making choices. Now, let me give you an idea of what would be required for that narcissist to change. And then I want you to be thinking, is this something that this narcissistic person would even be able to embrace? When we talk about a cure for narcissism, what we're talking about is a change in your attitude, a change in your emotional management style, a change in your interactive patterns with other individuals, and we have to go down to the characteristics, or the ingredients that are as central to who you are. And so the non-narcissistic way of life consists of ingredients like humility. It's not all about me. Empathy. I need to tune into you. Conscientiousness. I want to have a sense of courtesy and decency as I engage with people. I need to be agreeable, even in disagreeable circumstances. It doesn't mean that you're a yes person, but you can actually be somebody that remains approachable, even when difficulties, or especially when difficulties show up. That's a non-narcissistic, very strong characteristic. You need to know how to manage conflict and differences constructively. You don't have to get rid of all your anger, but when you do feel angry, you can still ask the question, what's the wisest way to address this in such a way where all the participants can walk away with their own self-respect still intact? A non-narcissistic way of life involves enjoying serving other people. By the way, there's actually research there. There was a study, and this is at least 5 years ago, about how can you tell if a person is going to have a contented way of life, and they had all sorts of different markers that they had, but the number one ingredient of people who truly found life to be contentment producing, are people who have a regular habit of serving others, volunteerism and things like that. That's a non-narcissistic way of being. So, okay, doc, what's the cure? The cure is what I just said. You want to embrace those kind of ingredients, and then you want to ask what kind of behaviors will go along with those kind of ingredients. So then the rest of it is, can they be helped if they won't admit that they have any problems and they blame everybody else all the time? The answer is, I can't get inside of someone else's brain and scramble it and make it where they are doing all these characteristics that I just indicated. You can't either. And it all goes down to the concept of free will. Every person has a choice regarding who they're going to be. And you would think that common sense would say, hey, look, all this anger that you have and this defensiveness and persecution complex, all of this trying to vie for position and trying to be in the place of honor and putting people down as you try to elevate yourself, it doesn't work. You would think that common sense would prevail, but that's what I'm referring to when I say narcissists are stuck in a loop of their own dysfunction. In order, I've used in one of my recent videos, I use the term emotional incompetence. In order to have the capacity to make the adjustments that would get you away from narcissism, you have to declare yourself emotionally competent, and not just declare yourself. You have to live into emotional competence. If an 8-year-old kid is angry, I can sit down with that 8-year-old and say, let's talk about your options when you feel angry toward your brother. And one option is you can yell. Another option is you can hold a grudge. Another option is you can kick them in the shins. Those options don't work, and here are the consequences that go along with that. Another option is you can sit down and talk reasonably. Another option is you can remove yourself until things settle down. You can set stipulations, and I'll talk with that 8-year-old on an 8-year-old level. What I would be doing is I would be developing emotional competence. Now, I'm under no illusion that an 8-year-old is going to figure it out, in one conversation, but I've got 18 years with that kid. And over and over and over, we're going to talk about who you are, what you believe, what your options are when certain circumstances come along. And hopefully by the time you're in your mid and late teens and early adult years, we can talk about it in a much fuller way, and you're going to have a much cleaner conception. And by the time you're an adult, you would be thinking, okay, I'm still feeling angry. What are my options? How am I going to manage this? Or I'm still feeling hurt or whatever it may be. And you've got a good definition of yourself. That's emotional competence. Now, I want you to think, how many of you were exposed to that kind of excellent teaching? And the answer is not many. And most of us did not have that kind. So what we do in our adult years is we go back and we make up for lost time, and we say, well, maybe I didn't have that emotional competence drilled into me in the wisest way when I was a kid, but I still have the rest of my life ahead of me. Where am I going to be today? And how can I have my emotional competence and plug it in? And that way you get out of that loop of narcissism. Narcissists don't go there. It's like, it's the way I've always done it. And if you think I'm wrong, you're an idiot. And they're in constant cover up mode, and they've got such a deep sense of insecurity. They have a very strong sense of shame about ever admitting that they need to have some adjustments, that they're unable to pull themselves out. They just keep going back in their circular motion and doing all the dysfunctional things. You know, the old definition of insanity. You keep doing the same thing over and over and over, and you wish for better results. It doesn't work, but that's where they are, and it's perplexing if you're a healthy person. But what we have to do here on Team Healthy is we have to acknowledge that's it's truth. And as much as growth seems to be true and wise to you, status quo is the way narcissists are. And the further down the spectrum they are, then the less inclined they're going to be to say, I need to work on this. So factor that in. It's very sad. Okay, now the next question we have is somewhat of a similar one. This says, what's the chance that a narcissist learns to better themselves? They learn self-love and has meaningful relationships and takes responsibility for his or her life. Do you know of any? In other words, how does that happen? I just mentioned, is there a cure? And the answer is yes, but they have to want to do it. So this next question, well, what would have to happen then in a narcissist's life so that they might start gravitating towards the better alternatives? And almost always, it's if they're going to grow, and the odds are low, 5%, 10%. I don't know. That may be optimistic. But if they're going to grow, it tends to be because of crisis. Maybe that person has gone through a divorce, or they've lost quite a number of friends, or they've embarrassed themselves greatly, or their addictions have so completely taken over that they have to acknowledge it. Step one in the AA program is you just have to acknowledge my life has gotten out of hand, and I'm not able to manage this on my own. Some sort of crisis has to come along typically if a narcissist is going to change. But even then, it tends not to always work. Sometimes I've had so many people that would come into my office. They're in the middle of a huge crisis. It's like, oh, doc, I'm so glad to have you here. Let's talk things through. And some of them get back to their religion. Some of them they start doing the community service kind of stuff that I talked about. Some of them will try to even make amends toward other individuals. But really, the proof is 6 months or a year or 2 years down the road, because once the crisis is gone, it's finished, it's kind of in the rearview mirror, many of them begin reverting. And that's what I mean when I say they're in the same loop. It's like, oh, I got this thing figured out. And it's like, no, you never do. And it's kind of an odd way of looking at it. But the best way for you to say I'm on top of it is to acknowledge I'm never on top of it. Does that make any sense? The best way to say I'm growing is to say I'll never finish growing. You acknowledge that you're a work in progress. You always have that capacity to decide to backslide. But at the same time, knowing that, you remain very determined to live inside of your healthy ingredients. And many people, once the crisis is done, they go right back. And before you know it, they're back to their same old, same old. And so time tends to be a teacher, but time also reveals the depth or not of that person's efforts. Okay. But if it's going to happen, typically it's the result of crisis. Okay, this next question, and this is being asked by someone that I'm sure has had a shame-based way of thinking. Okay, see if you can relate to this one. This person asks, "Aren't we just being judgmental when we say a narcissist can't be helped, or that we should just give up on them?" Okay, is that being judgmental? What do you think? I'd like to hear from you. So I'd kind of like to see what some of your comments are. Are you being judgmental when you say, well, they're just the way they are, they're stuck in that loop and they're not going to get out? I don't think that's being judgmental. I think it's just describing the way it is. The judgmental aspect comes when you have this sense of glee or better than superiority. Look at you. You can't change. You're no good. And I knew it. I knew it all along. And then when you try to hold yourself up as better than that other individual, that's when you're being judgmental. When your critical spirit is there, I don't think we're being judgmental to say a high percentage of these people are beyond redemption. It's just simply true. Uh, let's take an aside. Let's suppose you go to a medical doctor and the medical doctor says you're about 30 pounds overweight. In order for you to have a better physical life, you need to lose 30 pounds. And then you don't do it. Well, you can say, well, that doctor just being judgmental. Well, what if the doctor is just going on science and saying, well, when you're this way, you tend to have certain problems, whether it's diabetes or heart problems or joint issues or whatever. When you're this weight, you tend to do a lot better. Is that being judgmental? Or is that just saying, I'm trying to objectively tell you what the facts are? Well, in the same way, we can say that if a guy like me or just a friend says, well, you're overweighted in this control direction or this manipulation direction or in that lack of empathy, let's see if we can work on that. And then when they don't do it, and then you say, I feel badly that it's there, but there it is. That's not being judgmental. That's just simply looking at as objectively as we can. Now, in the vein in which this question is asked, I do say let's be sure that we're not judgmental. I don't feel the need to kick a narcissist while they're down. I don't feel the need to gloat, thinking, nah, I'm not like you, because where's that going to get me? So we don't want to be judgmental, but it's not judgmental when you simply say these are the facts as common sense would show. Okay. Okay. This next one. How do I get over a narcissistic mother that never gives or cares anything about me, even through my own health issues? I never got a call from her. She only calls me to serve her and to be her slave for the last 40 years. She has scarred me physically and mentally. So, how do I get over this mother? Part of it is you give yourself permission to grieve, and it's okay to say it's disappointing. But then the rest of it is let's start with the presumption a person doesn't show this kind of rudeness or disregard for someone if they've had a really solid history of the opposite. Typically, somebody who's this cold or raw or insensitive tends to have a history where that was something that they experienced in their own personal life, but they haven't really done anything about it. They just simply pass it on to the next generation. And again, that's what I mean when I say we're in a loop, or narcissists can be in a loop that they just stay stuck in. And by the way, I think it's about 10 days or so from now, I've got a video coming up that's the question is narcissism learned? And the answer is that it's partially just built into you, and some more than others. And then the rest of it is, yeah, there's some other ingredients that come into play that are part of the more nurture side. And so someone like this mother, they haven't really taken the time, like this other question I just responded to. They haven't taken the time to really slow down and think. So how do you get over that narcissistic mother? You begin to ask yourself, what are my better alternatives? Where do I want to take this family tree? I'm looking down. There's another question that goes right along with it. So let's go ahead and ask this question and dovetail it into the one I'm on right here, and that is. You've mentioned using, Dr. C, you've mentioned using our hurt to develop the better alternative lifestyle. It sounds nice, and I agree with you on the concept. Could you elaborate on practical steps to achieve this? For example, how can I use my hurt for my raging narcissistic father to become more patient with my own child? So this first question said, well, I have a mother who's this way. This other one says, well, my father's this way. How can I be that one that takes the hurt that I've been exposed to, and how can I use it in a way that is going to be the pattern's going to be broken, as opposed to me being the next one that just stays in the loop and keeps passing it. Here's the way I like to zero in on this. I want you, this one with the dysfunctional mother, the other with the dysfunctional father. I want you to just see if you can categorize some of the characteristics that are associated with that dysfunctional parent. For example, my mother is constantly angry, or my father goes into heavy cover up mode and is the most offensive person, or this person uses denial, or this individual has this attitude of superiority and they're constantly talking down to people and being critical, or they hide behind addictions, or they can make good social connections and impressions, but behind the scenes they're completely opposite of that, or they gripe constantly. Yeah, just make a list. What are the actual specific behaviors and attitudes and emotional management things that you see that you find to be dysfunctional? And then when you write it down, then it would be interesting on a separate side of the paper to ask, what are the alternatives? For example, yeah, my parent is constantly angry. Hmm. What do I think is the alternative to that? Well, just a few minutes ago, I talked about how you can manage anger, but in a constructive way. What does constructive anger look like? And you can learn how to differentiate between assertiveness versus aggressive or passive aggressive. Or when we talk about, this parent of mine, they just go into this constant cover up mode and they're defensive. Hmm. What's the opposite of defensiveness? Well, the opposite of that would be openness to input, thinking carefully about the input from others, even if you don't agree with it, being vulnerable with your own need. Okay, that and you just go down the list. This person's constantly griping and criticizing. What's the alternative to that? Well, the alternative could be being an encourager, or being objective about things that you don't care for, but in such a way where you're trying to be constructive with it. And you just go down and you want to be very specific rather than saying, I just wish things could be different. Okay, that's too broad. That's too, it's not specific enough. Instead, be particular, be specific, and whenever you see things inside your family tree and you want to go in a different direction, be very directive with yourself about what that would look like, and then you can be the one that gets out of the loop. Now, I want to go to another question that is a very similar one. This person says, growing up with a severe narcissist, and it doesn't say if it's grandmother or sister or brother or dad, mother, growing up with a severe narcissist and not having any clue as to what normal is, I'm now having to question what I've accepted as normal in other relationships. And it makes me sick to think that I've spent my whole pattern of life, or my whole life in this pattern blindly so. I'm mad at myself for accepting things that I've been questioning for a very long time. So, in other words, here I look at it and it's like, here I am this deep into my life and I got pulled into that loop with them. They're stuck and they can't get out. Now I'm finally realizing this is not normal, but what do I do? Okay, I mentioned just a minute ago, come up with some of the ingredients that you don't like, that you've seen in your family or other relations, and then come up with the better alternatives. Let's take it a little bit further. And this was an assignment I would sometimes give patients of mine. I want you to make a list. And when I say a list, 15, 20 ingredients long, make a list of what you consider healthy living to look like. For example, healthy people tend to be patient. Healthy people, when they are firm, they can be firm with calmness. Okay, patience, calm, firmness. Healthy people know how to have joy and happiness. Healthy people know how to go to their place of peace, and they pull back and they concentrate on the things that they enjoy most. Healthy people have self-restraint. Healthy people know how to be gentle. Healthy people will respond to negatives with a mature response, and just come up with as many positive characteristics that you can think of. And because most people say, well, I think I'd like to be more patient and more understanding. Okay, those are two. Keep going. Give me about 18 more. Write down on a sheet of paper what your conception of healthy traits would be. Then Keep that sheet of paper, whether it's on your next to your bathroom sink or in the kitchen or on the mirror. And each day, for as long as that list is, pick one. Okay. Pick one ingredient. For example, healthy people know how to be patient. I sure don't want to be an impatient person, but I find myself impatient. Okay. Today's Wednesday. My goal for today is to practice patience in as many ways as I can. That's my focus. This is who I'm going to be. Thursday, the healthy ingredient that I have on my list, encouragement. Okay, on Thursday, I'm going to focus on what it means to be as a person of encouragement. Friday, it's self-restraint. Okay, on Friday, that's my focal point the entire day. That's what, and you want to go ahead and remind yourself, I can do this. I can figure it out. I have a conception of what it is, but I have to have concentration. And then when you get to the end of the list, go back and start at the top all over again. And it's a matter of giving yourself the assignment of those healthy ingredients rather than just saying, I just wish it could be better. When you're trying to pull out of that loop that narcissists are stuck in, you're going to go nowhere until you're very specific. And then if you have a friend or someone that you can be accountable with and you let them know, this is my game plan, you want to work with me on that, even better. Great, do that. But make sure that you're not just saying, I just wish it would be better, or seems to me like we ought not to do this. Um, Go further than that, and make sure that you're someone that says, I'm not just going to talk about it. I'm going to be somebody that actually does something about it. Okay, we've got one or two more times questions here. This person says, Dr. C, how to handle being treated with extremely limited affection, being ignored and invalidated with zero intimacy, but there's always excuses. Okay, this sounds to me like we're dealing with somebody that has strong empath tendencies. Good for you, by the way. Most of you know that I give a high five to anybody that has that. And so it's like, I'd like to be tender and I'd like to show affection and kindness and compliments. What do I do when it's just a desert out there for me? Well, I don't know, get out of the desert. There are some people out there who would appreciate what you have to say and who you are. Um, I won't go deep into this, but I know of a woman whose husband is very cold and uncaring, and like this person says, no affection. So what she's done, and this is somebody that's related to people that I know, she's in pickleball. She does service events through her church. She is tuned in to other friends and relatives who really appreciate who she is, and she spends time with grandkids. In other words, it's like, well, I wish that this person over here who's just cold blooded could work with me. Well, he's not. That being the case, what are my alternatives? Now, there you have crummy alternatives. You can go have an affair. You can whine and moan and groan, and you can stay in your room and complain. Those are options, not good options, but those are options. But you want to remind yourself the narcissist is not in charge of who I am. I'm in charge. I'm a free person. Freedom means I have the privilege to choose. And so at some point, it's on you to ask, who do I want to be? And if the narcissist says or implies, I'm not working with you, the response can be, I'm aware of that, which is why I'm going in a different direction. And you make your own way. And sometimes you have to do it with someone who's not the narcissist. Sometimes you need to disconnect with them altogether. Okay, one last question. Okay. Um, and this is another one that I can just feel it's coming from a heart of tenderness. This person just says, why do they purposely want to be cruel and hurtful? Is this a form of control, a way that they can feel superior? And here you are, you're trying to commit to the ingredients that we on Team Healthy are committed to: dignity, respect, and civility. And you ask, why are they so cruel? And the answer is yes, it is a form of control. ultimately you want to see that this is a very, their pattern is a very twisted way of trying to competitively compensate for being a nobody. They're dreadfully afraid that someone's going to come along and say, I don't really hold you in high regard. They're very afraid that someone's going to say, well, if you made a mistake, then you're a terrible person. And so they are constantly trying to dodge shame. And they're constantly trying to make themselves look better than they actually are. And there's one notion that keeps narcissists stuck in their loop, and that is uh, they think, I have to be strong. I have to be above it all. When in fact, one of the strongest things that you can do is to say, today I don't feel very strong. Today I feel weak. And then we go with the next question, where do I want to go with that? And sometimes you just let it be there, and then you're able to come out of it. You accept yourself as being a work in progress. Narcissists, yes, there's a cruelty that's there, and you want to talk them out of it, but after a while, it becomes non-judgmentally a notion where you say, this person is where they are. They don't seem to want to change. They have a free will, and they're not doing very well with that. But I acknowledge they're still free. In my freedom, I've got to take care of me, and that's boundaries. In my this is me. Well, the course that I have, we go deeply into that kind of notion. So it's a matter of recognizing narcissists tend to remain stuck in their own loop of dysfunction. You don't have to stay caught up in that yourself. Okay. The reason we call this team healthy is someone out there needs to be the one that says, I'll do it. I want to be healthy. I want to be somebody that has all those healthy ingredients, and I know who I am. I've got emotional competence that I'm building upon. We may not be able to change everyone out there, but you can be a better person. That's a good start. All right, guys. Listen, thanks for letting me be on your journey. You have no idea how much I appreciate the fact that you would join me in my videos and in my live feeds here every week. Um, I've been hurting. I know many of you have been hurting because of this mass shooting that we've had here in Texas, and it just makes us wonder what in the world is going on there. Why don't we just agree to this? We need as many decent people as we can, firm, decisive, knowing who we are, and doing all we can to make adjustments as is necessary. Um, I, Unabashedly, I say I'm committed to decency. I'm committed to goodness, and I hope you can be too. And that's our starting point. Um, let's be beacons of love to one another. I'll see you next week. Bye.